family home, it's more of a lifestyle choice, not really a wealth building asset.
Let's get everything squared off, let's work towards a budget, and then at that point we'll start investing, because like you said, there's no point in pumping water in there if it's going to fall out the other side. Welcome back to episode 8 of Your Wealth Playbook, the no bullshit guide to building wealth. Kerrod, how are you?
Mate, I couldn't be better, as always. Today we're going to be talking about why your house is not an investment, digging into some of the details and some of the misconceptions around building wealth, but not using your house as your primary wealth vehicle.
Spot on. I think it'll be a really good topic today to talk about, because there are a lot of data points out there that people will point to about how the wealth that they build in their own home because of capital gains exemptions is their primary source of wealth. And for a lot of Australians, that is the case. But outside of this huge nest egg that you've got, we need to be building other forms of wealth off the back of this.
Yes, absolutely. A family home, it's more of a lifestyle choice, not really a wealth building asset. It's a cost center. You've got your maintenance, you've got your rates, you've got your upkeep, you've got your insurances. It ties up capital for a long time, doesn't generate any cash flow while you're living there. As I mentioned, it just serves a purpose as a lifestyle choice. It's not a wealth building strategy. Buying your family home and calling it an investment is a bit like buying Jared's favorite car, a Ferrari, and expecting that to go up in value. But like a Ferrari, a house, there's cost to it. Sure, you can get to A to B with your nice brand new red Ferrari, but it's draining your wallet through all the bills and after-tax dollars that you've got to have to pay for the interest on the loan. So redirect that money. If you'd sink it into a bigger home, you can do that. But and we're going to talk through some strategies around if you actually put, instead of upsizing into a bigger home, if you had just redirected some of those funds into an investment account, an investment property, anything that generates some wealth for you over the longer term. You know, for example, if you were going to go and get a $1.5 million house and you've already got an $800,000 house, that's $700,000 difference between the upgrade that we could put into an investable asset can really start to compound and build some wealth over a long period of time. And it really lets you and sets you up to build generational wealth, which is what we want to talk about. $700K, if you put that into an ETF and invested that at a 7% annual return in 20 years' time, $2.7 million. I know which one I'd rather have. You get a nice fancy home that you've paid off and you've still got your house. Yes, lovely. Or you can have your not as great house for the $800,000, but in 20 years' time, you've got nearly $3 million. It's not a bad trade-off.
Not a bad trade-off at all. And it is one of the pillars of wealth that we talk about. So the main pillars of wealth within the average Australian household will be their principal place of residence. It may be an investment property, share portfolio, or trading funds, and their superannuation. So today is not something that we're talking about that, no, you can't do these things. All these things can live collaboratively together. And we're going to talk about ways that you can split up your cash flow, talk about things that we've spoken about in earlier episodes about how you can itemize and turn your income into a percentage and divide it up into something that's going into a non-deductible repayment like your principal place of residence, and have money that's going over into other things like your superannuation, like into shares, and compounding that over a long period of time as well.
Building wealth for the long term. Looking long, playing short, Jared. Something that we love to talk about. The hidden tax I want to talk about. We always talk about, personal income tax or business tax, BAS, business activity statements that you've got to pay. It just all seems like tax, land tax, taxes. One big tax that doesn't cost you any money, or you might not think that it costs you any money initially, is the ignorance tax. Certain taxes, the ignorance tax is the hidden cost of what you haven't learned or what you're choosing to ignore. It's the gap between where you are and where you could be if you gain that knowledge. Hopefully you might get it by listening to this podcast. Skills, perspective, awareness, that you're currently lacking. Where are you paying the ignorance tax in life right now? I know I've done it plenty of times, and they call it experience because you haven't got the outcome that you were after, so they call that experience. Where if you'd got the desired outcome, it would have been great. So the ignorance tax is real. People overpay for homes, they hold on to bad debt, all because they don't know any better, basically. Or you get the old adage advice that you might have got down the pub after a couple of schooners or at a kid's birthday party when we're all talking about how wealthy we are and how great of a strategy that we've all got. But knowledge closes that gap for ignorance costs. Basically getting to you, what do you really want out of life, out of your investments? One of the stories that I wanted to talk through today, because I want to loop this back in, Jared, is an ignorance tax that I see a lot of clients go through. Is they'll have a family home, the $700,000 or $800,000 family home. They will then get a little bit more income. They'll get a life partner, and they want a little bit more out of life. So they want the bit bigger home. They want the home with the pool. They want it in the nicer area because they think that in their mind that looks great to everybody else. However, you're swimming and drowning in debt, and you keep your first home as now an investment, and you go and get the new home for $1.5 million. But your first home, it might only have $500,000, $400,000 worth of a loan left on it, which is now an investment loan, yes, but you've had to borrow the equity out of there and leverage yourself up to go and get your new $1.5 million house.
Plus stamp duty.
Plus stamp duty is now 100% non-deductible debt on $1.5 million. You've got a noose around your neck for the next 25, 30 years, all while you've got a nice little investment property there. It's probably nearly neutrally or positively geared because the loan's so low on it, on that investment loan, but you are drowning in debt. And it's the ignorance tax of going, okay, well, if this is my principal place of residence, my first one, $700,000 house that I had, if I had to sell that, get all the equity, reduce the amount of loan that I have on my principal place of residence to may only be $500,000 instead of the $1.5 million, I can then still go and get an investment after that. And then I can have the 100% debt on an investment property, not on my principal place of residence. Much better from a tax perspective, much better from a building wealth perspective. But it's the ignorance tax of just going, why would I sell my first home? This is now going to be a cracking investment. But when you look into the numbers, it can be really limiting, debilitating, having such a large loan that you can't do anything with over the next 25 or 30 years. Kills your lifestyle.
And I think a lot of that comes down to misinformation and not understanding the difference between deductible debt and non-deductible debt. People look at, they've already got a property there. Why would I sell it? Why would I pay an agent to go and do that? And then why would I pay stamp duty on another purchase after that? Now, without truly understanding the difference between deductible and non-deductible debt and looking at, yes, we want this principal place of residence because we need it for lifestyle, family, schools, things that we've spoken about. The important bit of that is that you have potentially 100% plus cost loan for that property, which, yes, you need to get into it, but the other side of the coin is this investment asset that we've got here that we should have the script flipped.
It should be flipped. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So without getting that advice, and quite often the people that we come across here would be, mum and dad on wages, don't work closely with their accountant or their advisor, and they don't know. What you don't know, you don't know. And that's what we're here to do, is we're here to educate people on this sort of stuff that,
most importantly, 100% debt on investable debt, not on your family home. Get that as low as possible, as quick as possible. It'll allow you to live a lifestyle. It'll allow you to build wealth. But I think more importantly, you can get that noose off your neck that you don't have to earn such a large income to pay such a large debt that's non-tax deductible. Quite debilitating, not only from a lifestyle point of view, but also from a wealth building point of view. So common misconception, ignorance tax, get your family home as low as possible, as soon as possible. And if you can do that by selling a property, why wouldn't you?
Identify it, address it, eliminate it.
Yeah, I love it. Talking about good debts versus bad debts, when should you be investing if you have debt? Now, we've just spoken about debt as a priority. When should you really be investing if you've got a family home and you've got some debt there? For me, personally, and what I work with clients is when you get to that lifestyle that you're comfortable and you've built up, might have been some offset, might be in some extra payments, you've got a little bit of home equity there now as well. And if you want to go and build some wealth, I'd prefer that you were going to use cash from the deposit that you've already saved up in your offset account or the loan repayments. I'll prefer you to go and use that. Yes, you can pull a little bit of equity out. Yes, you can have 100% of debt, but managing your debt obligations as a whole is important. A lot of people think that I need to go and get assets to go and build wealth. Yes, but also if you're repaying debt, your net asset position is also going up. So I love repaying debt on the family home as much as possible. On an investment loan, I like to try and get them neutrally and or positively geared, nearly off the bat, so that you don't hurt your lifestyle, because there is nothing more hurtful as a family than cash flow. And you see the studies and stats around marriage breakdowns due to finances. If you are placed under a lot of stress because you're holding onto this investment property because it is negatively geared, oh, I'm doing it because I get a nice tax break. That's all well and good, but how's the family life at home because you're going to have to put $200-300 a week away into this investment property? Make sure that you've got everything squared away. Good debts, yes, on investment property, perfect. Bad debts, I don't think that you really should be investing if you do have credit card debt, if you have zip pay debt, if you have afterpay, is it afterpay? Zip pay, afterpay, yeah, something like that.
Anything that's paying for.
Yes, the personal loans, any sort of personal loan debt that you've got, get rid of those first, because they generally come with a large interest cost, can be anywhere from ranging from 15 to 25% on any of those. Get rid of those first. It's a bit like a leaky bucket, right? You're trying to build wealth, you're trying to pour water into your bucket, trying to build this wealth for you, but you've got holes in the bottom of it. There's just interest coming out from everywhere. Make sure that your bucket, get a new bucket, get rid of all of that debt. And what you really want is a pump, so that there's constant water coming into your bucket. Buy the pump first. Make sure that you've got the cash available. Go and buy your pump first. Go and buy that great assets with cash that you've already got set up and saved, so that they're like a pump, can just continue to pump water or continue to pump money back into your finances, rather than your investments taking money out of your finances.
And it's interesting when we speak to people, quite often it's, they want to do this sort of stuff now, but quite often by putting a plan into place for the next 3 months or 6 months, when it's identified that, there's a couple of bad debts here, probably not really advisable to look to invest into shares or an investment property that's going to return you 8% if you're paying 20 odd percent over here. Let's put some manageable steps in place and some goals over the next 3 to 6 months. Let's get rid of all this non-deductible debt that's at a higher rate. Let's get everything squared off. Let's work towards a budget. And then at that point, we'll start investing, because like you said, there's no point in pumping water in there if it's going to fall out the other side at a quicker rate than what you can pump it in. And that's what investing with debts like that would look like.
Yes, exactly. Get rid of your bad debts. Don't have the ignorance tax. Make sure that once you've got rid of the bad debts, get yourself some surplus funds and then start your investing journey. That is very much important. It's another question that I always got when we're talking about ignorance tax is, do I need to be wealthy to be an investor? I get it all the time, and Jared and I specifically here aren't talking about you needing to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank to get started. No, get rid of all of those bad debts. Yes, have a little bit of savings set up and ready to go, but you don't need to be super wealthy to get started. It's a bit like going to university for 3 or 6 years. You study, you learn all about the concepts of what you've studied. It might be a business, it might be a marketing degree. When you're actually on the job, you learn more in the first 3 months than you did in the last 3 years or 6 years. So when should you start investing? When the time's right for you, once you've got the bad debt. You will learn more by investing and making some mistakes along the way, yes, but you'll learn more by investing rather than reading every book or, talking to every one of your friends. You'll get more out of it by getting out there and having a go yourself.
Just getting started and being consistent with it, whether that's weekly, fortnightly, or monthly. When is the best time to start investing? 20 years ago. When's the second best time to start investing? Today.
Yes, you hear that advice all the time. It's making sure that 20 years ago was a cracking time to invest, but we'll be saying that same thing in 20 years from now. So get yourself in the right position to start investing, making sure that got no bad debts, and away we go.
Now, Kerrod, what should I invest in? I'm overwhelmed here. There's investment properties, there's salary sacrificing into super, there's shares. Where do I start?
Jared, that is a cracking question. Where do you start? This is definitely not personal advice. This is general advice only, and we'll always have this disclaimer in this podcast. This is for informational purposes only. There are plenty of ways that you can start investing. Getting into the property ladder, yes, you will need to have a deposit or some equity saved up and ready to go, because there are substantial costs to get into property to start with. A lovely thing about property is you'll have stamp duty, especially if it is for an investment property, you'll have that. So that's an added cost that you have to have. But for me personally, it's very hard to go and just get an indexed fund into property in Australia. Yes, property over the last 20 years, 25 years have gone up in Australia, same as the stock market, but there's markets within markets. You can't just take a national average and go, I just want to be a property investor in Australia. Just give me the index of all of Australia, because Perth performs very differently to Darwin, to the eastern suburbs of Australia, to Newcastle, to regional New South Wales, regional Queensland. There are so many different markets, so many different pockets inside Australia. It's very hard to just get the average. So when you are investing, it's evaluating what your actually goals are. And when I talk about goals, what do you want it to do for you in 20 years? So I think that I've got some data here to back it up. The Australian housing market has returned on average around 4.5% to 6% per year in house price growth in the last 20 years, from 2005 to 2025. So it's around 5% based on the national median prices. It obviously varies between Perth, Brisbane, Melbourne, Adelaide, all of the majors. But inflation is also in there. So that knocks out a couple of percent of return as well, 2 to 3% that inflation generally runs out over that 20-year time period. So the capital growth on average is around 2 to 3%.
The real rate of return.
The real rate of return. Yes.
That's important that we talk about what the real rate of return is versus what the actual rate of return, because like you said, we've got to normalize that for indexation and for inflation. Yes. And over period of 30 years, what a dollar bought 30 years ago is going to be very different to what a dollar buys today.
Exactly. In Newcastle, done a little bit better than the national average, up at 6.2%. Lucky Novocastrians have done a little bit better than the national average, which is nice, outperformed the national housing market. The ASX 200, if people don't know what the ASX 200 is, it is the largest 200 companies in Australia. So you think the big four banks, you think of the large miners that we have here in Australia, BHP and Rio, the largest 200 companies by market cap, how big they are in Australia. So the ASX 200 over 20 years has performed around 3.5% in capital growth. But there's also some cracking dividend paying stocks among those top 200 over the last 20 years. The big four banks pay on average anywhere between 4 to 6% in income. So when we total in the incomes as well as the capital growth for the ASX 200 over that 20-year time period, it works out to be about 6.5 to 7.5% return, or the net total return since over 25 years, since 2000, is 8.11%. It's not too bad. Dividends matter. It's a bit like your rental income. You're getting a little bit of income. In Australia, we've got 4 out of the top 10 largest dividend paying stocks in the world, being some of the banks and BHP and Rio. So in Australia, those dividends matter, and people that have held, the Commonwealth Bank, I've got a couple of clients that bought the Commonwealth Bank back in 1990 when the Commonwealth Bank shares were $10 a share. And they nearly get more than that in dividends each quarter than what they paid for the stock 30 years ago. Nice spot to be in, because it continues to compound. The Australian banks are, funnily enough, they're probably tied very closely to the housing market, because a lot of their business is to Australians with the variable interest rate that we do have in Australia. And I actually seen that the big four banks they're also in the top 8 profitable banks in the world. The variable interest rate cycle that we do have here in Australia, it's very different to most of the world. In the US, when you go and get a home loan, they'll have a fixed rate mortgage that you can lock in for 30 years for the life of that loan. So if you went and got a loan during COVID over 30 years, you would have locked in an interest rate at 2%. Won the lotto. Imagine if we could have locked in, our interest rates at 2% back then. So it's why the big four banks, they get a bad stigma, probably correct, because do they rip Australians off or not? It's probably a different episode, not this one that we're going to go into. But they're great profitable banks tied to the housing market in a certain extent. This isn't a solicitation to go and buy banking stocks, but they are tied a little bit to the housing market. They pay a cracking dividend, and they've been a great dividend investment over their life period, which is these banks have been around for hundreds of years. These big four banks, the S&P 500, bit like the ASX 200. Now I'm throwing some a little bit of terminology at people. If you've never heard of the S&P 500, Standard & Poor's 500 is the largest 500 companies in the US market. So you think about Apple, Microsoft, Google, Nvidia, Tesla, Facebook, or it's now called Meta. They're seven. Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's, my favorite, and Jared's. I'm getting him across the line as well. Some of the big companies in the world, the S&P 500 over the last 20 years has returned 7.8% from those last 20 years, including dividends though. It bumps up to about 9.5%, in between 9.5% and 10.5%. So if we're looking at it from a basis of what should I invest in, I think that there's an answer that I would like to be diversified and have a portion of my portfolio in all of these. If we're looking at a returns point of view, historical returns and no indication of future returns. But the actual S&P 500, not in the Aussie market, has been a cracking investment, 9.5%, 10.5% over the last 20 years.
And I think what that shows is the importance of diversifying. And there are going to be periods of time where others are outperforming. There's going to be times where you've got to liquidate different assets at different times. So if you do have exposure over a couple of these different asset classes and you are building it up over a period of time, you gave the example of 1990 to now, and what that's then shown by consistently reinvesting your dividends that you get paid every quarter, every half, or every year, by consistently putting money into funds like that on a weekly, fortnightly, monthly basis, what that will do over a long period of time. And by splitting up and apportioning your income, that if you've got a repayment that's coming out of $1,000 a week that's going to your home loan, potentially splitting it up and putting $400, $300 into a fund like this, that is going to build up over a period of 20 or 30 years. Coupling that with the growth in your principal place of residence, potentially an investment property, and potentially even salary sacrificing a very small amount into your super to diversify across all of them, is going to have some amazing results across these asset classes.
Absolutely. Jared, what was the stat that you mentioned to me before? If you put $20 a week away,
18 to 65
Yep.
would, based on average returns, would see about $700,000 as a separate asset over that period of time. So $20 a week. Are you going to miss that over the period from 18 to 65? Unlikely. Are you going to enjoy an extra $700,000 based on average returns over that period? I think you're going to enjoy that. And that's outside of superannuation. That's outside of principal place of residence. So that, if we're then talking, $200 or $300 that's then going to increase with inflation over that period, what that would then look like on retirement by diversifying is going to be enormous.
Jared, when I get my high school certificate at 18, why don't they tell me if I put $20 a week away, I'll have nearly $750,000?
So that's what we do at Your Wealth Playbook. We're here to educate the masses.
Yes, I love it. And it's very, very simple, Jared. I love those four analogies. Well, not four analogies, the four ways that you can build wealth. Through your house. Yes, it's not an asset, and we've spoken about it not being an asset, but it is accumulating value.
It forms part of your balance sheet, which all of this does, but is it giving you an income return or any sort of tax deductible nature? No, it's not. But does it form part of your balance sheet, and is it important? Yes, it is.
Yep.
But we need to take that out of our mentality that this is part of our wealth strategy. It does form a very small part of it, but there are other very important pillars that we need to build off the back of it.
Don't let it be a lifestyle killer.
Yeah.
Because you've got too big a house. Build some wealth, even if it's $20 a week for those 18 to 65. You can do that outside of super. You mentioned super as well. You can also do that inside super. If you said to your employer, I want to put salary sacrifice, $20 a week, so it doesn't even hit my bank account, I don't even know You get a tax deduction along the way. This is not advice to go and do this, by the way, but amazing that from 18 to 65, by the time you do retire, I mean, you see the ads on TV. When I used to watch mainstream TV a little bit, you would see that compare the pair. It'd be Jared and Kerrod, same jobs, same ages. Yes, the little square figure is what they used to do. Yes, and same super contributions. However, if you can change your super contributions, geez, you really make a difference. And I say that with a lot of clients that I work with now. By adding a little bit into your superannuation over a long period of time, geez, it makes a difference by the time that you retire. And that may mean that you can take that European holiday every year until you can no longer or don't want to put the luggage or fly for 24 hours to go to Europe. You'll get to a point in time when you don't want to do that when you're 75 or 80, but between 60 and 75, geez, a European holiday to Spain each June and July when it gets super cold in Australia, it's a nice thought. And if all I've got to do is put $20 a week away now, I reckon that's a fair trade-off. Looking long, playing short.
It's all about compounding, isn't it? It's, you also compare it to, if we see this rate cut that we're expecting, the impact that will have by not changing your repayments, leaving them exactly where they are, the compound effect of that over a long period of time. Yes, it may only be 0.25%. It'll shave 2 years off the average home loan without doing anything by leaving your repayments where they are and not dropping them down to the new minimum. So if you're doing that consistently in a dropping rate environment, you're going to put yourself in a very, very powerful position if you're at the start of your loan facility.
Yeah. I think compounding your wealth is great. If we can compound into a couple of different investments so that we're diversified through, yes, love for you to pay off the home loan, get rid of that. Should be a strategy around having the ability to pay off the home loan out of our surplus funds each week. Should also be a strategy around maybe a little bit more into super. Should also be a strategy around an investment property, building wealth that way. Should also be a strategy around dollar cost averaging into the market to get your returns. You've basically now got 4 water pumps filling up 4 buckets, building wealth for you. Pretty amazing, pretty simple.
And you know how we love automation. If that's going to be coming out into your super fund before it hits your account, when it does hit your account, it's going straight out into your home loan, a little bit more than what it was on your contracted amount, straight out into your share fund. It's just going to happen, and you're going to know what you've got left over at the end of the week or the fortnight. So much easier.
Automation, I love it. If you can set this up to come out automatically, I mean, this is not a product spin, and I'll never talk products on here, but there is probably, in Australia, there's probably 20 to 30 different share portfolio little apps that you can get where you can do micro investments each week, $20 a week, $50 a week, whatever that is applicable to you and your circumstances. Set it up, automation, it can just go and buy, and you come back to the question around, Jared, what should I be buying? Or Kerrod, what should I be buying? If you are not an experienced investor, and this is not personal advice, maybe diversification is the play for you. You can get indexed funds that have got the largest 200 companies in Australia so that you're not trying to pick whether Commonwealth Bank is better than the NAB or is that better than Westpac, because those decisions are made by people that are a lot smarter than Jared and I. And I think that if you can just dollar cost average into index funds, if that is not your wheelhouse, if that is not your domain, it'll lead to a lot better outcome for you with a lot less stress, because there is nothing more gut-wrenching than if you are doing this and if you are buying pumps to fill up your buckets and then Donald Trump decides to go and whack tariffs on the rest of the world and the markets drop 20% in 2 weeks. It's very gut-wrenching to see that your hard work has gone to the wayside for the last year in market volatility. Now, in my mind, that's a great time to be investing more. As I said, this is not personal advice, but it's easier. It's 20% is the general market. If you had an individual stock and it went down 50%, 20% is a little bit easier to stomach if you've got a diversified, broad-ranging ETF rather than a single sector stock, because if that's not your wheelhouse, you're probably going to pay an ignorance tax like most young males will when you think that you are bulletproof and you think that you know everything. You probably don't.
Even talking about, like you said, the big four banks, there could be an ASIC announcement that there's a massive fine being handed down to one because of something that's happened a long time ago. The stock market will react accordingly to announcements like that. So by investing in something that averages across the lot of them, and again, this isn't financial advice, but by doing that and diversifying instead of just picking one, yes, you may be able to pick the winner, but are you likely to outstrip the market average? Probably not.
Yep. Yep. Jared, when you're investing, do you rebalance every quarter if you've got a diversified portfolio, or do you let your winners run? If
It's
you've
a
got,
very good question.
yes, yes, one that I get asked all the time. What I mean by rebalancing here is if you've got, and let's call it for an example, we've been talking about the Commonwealth Bank, and the Commonwealth Bank has done phenomenally well compared to, let's call it, a Westpac or a NAB. Do you sell some of your high performing stocks to go and repurchase some of your poorly performing stocks? Do you change a good investment to go and buy bad investments? I'll put this analogy or put this scenario to you, Jared. Would you sell your Eastern Seaboard investment in Bondi Beach? Would you go and sell that investment to go and buy in Darwin?
Personally, I don't think I would.
Why not? Why won't you let your winner run? Why do you want to go and get into something else?
Look, I think it depends on the rate of return that you're getting within it as well and what dividends it's potentially paying. But I think if you're onto a good thing and you're comfortable with it, number one, you're going to solidify some capital gains there, and you're going to have to pay some tax. Do you necessarily want to do that and take some money out of your current portfolio? How far away from needing to use them are you? Do you feel that they're going to do the right thing for you over the foreseeable future? Are you not going to touch them for 20, 30 years? Or if you don't think you've got the ability to make those sort of decisions, you need to speak to a financial planner as well. I know for me, I wouldn't be able to make those decisions on my own, and I certainly don't currently. So I leave that to the expert when it comes to investing surplus funds there.
Yeah, and I mean I'm probably going to come back to Warren Buffett here, and Warren's biggest thing is that a large portion of his Berkshire Hathaway, of his currently publicly traded stocks that Berkshire Hathaway owns, is in Apple. 65% of his portfolio are in four stocks. They didn't start that way. However, they've significantly grown since the time that he bought them. I think one of his famous investments is in Coca-Cola. That's similar to the Commonwealth Bank. He bought Coca-Cola, which is a great dividend-paying stock. Might have been back in the 80s. It pays now him and Berkshire Hathaway, sorry, not him personally, but Berkshire Hathaway, it pays more in dividends a year than what he actually bought the stock for. So why would he ever sell it? There's continual income coming through. He would realize a capital gain that is going to be significant. It's very similar to his Apple stock. I think the Apple stock from the time that they purchased has gone up 400% when Berkshire Hathaway bought it. Apple, the business hasn't changed. It's still a cracking business. Yes, he's been trimming it a little bit, but it still makes up a very large portion of his portfolio because of how far it's run. He's not looking to fully exit it because it is still a cracking business. And that's when you are a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. You've got to assess how that investment is still performing. What's the future outlook for the investment? What are the tax implications? What does it look like? If it had served its purpose, maybe, yes, it might be time to sell it. But, and if there's no further gain that is going to be had out of that investment, sure, might make sense to sell it. But it's also applicable that it could continue. It's a cracking stock. It might be Coca-Cola and embedded into every single drinks fridge in every canteen, airport, supermarket globally, that it's going to continue doing so. I don't think anyone's going to knock Coca-Cola off the shelf, pun intended, anytime soon. Jared, mate, I think that's a wrap up for episode 8. Is we're talking about a little bit around diversification, but your house is not an investment, and making sure that you understand that, and not paying the ignorance tax of thinking that it is, and also keeping a lifestyle for yourself so that you can continue to live, continue to build wealth. There are other ways to get wealthy rather than buying the best home that you can buy in Merewether or Bondi. There's a bit better way to do it. and you can live a little.
Some lovely insights there from the best financial advisor going around. And we know that if you're out there looking for some advice on things like this, that Kerrod is the man to talk to. So reach out to the show or hit him up on his Instagram, which is in our bio, and look to book an appointment for yourself.
We'll see you back for episode 9 with some more actionable steps when we are looking long but playing short.
Thanks for listening.